A couple of you voted, and your voices were heard. A one-off listing of 3 potentially really bad PlayStation games rounded off a list of potential next games to revisit, and that one got more votes than any other. Well, it was 2-1 to the other votes, so it's not saying a ton. But we all have to start somewhere, so thanks for being a Patreon, and thanks even more for voting. This is obviously not a comprehensive list of the worst games for the system, as we have many contenders for that lovely title. But thematically, I think I have an interesting 3 porridges slopped up together for you. One is a game that I actually liked obsessively and had to come to terms with later on. One is probably the worst in its genre of all time. And the last is a title that was once crowned as the worst game of all time. Let's dig in. Quick honorable mention. I have no reason to play this game, as it is a generic PlayStation title that even then was considered the gruel of the JRPG world. However, it does have one of the most cringe opening sequences of all time, and I'd like to share that with you right now. Just majestic, isn't it? Batman and Robin is a PlayStation game released in 1998, the same year The Undertaker threw mankind off Hell in a Cell and plummeted 16 feet through an proved to be broken, not only releasing a movie that was so badly received that it derailed the entire franchise for nearly a decade, but its tie-in video game was delayed for nearly a year after the fact, well after everyone forced themselves to forget George Clooney's swan song, as this movie killed his career? Oh, he went on to act after this, like in 20 movies. Huh. The game suffered delay after delay, despite some promising previews in Ultra game players, pumping my veins with that hopefulness that only a kid could have, wanting to have his first good Batman game in like a literal century, since Batman on the NES and maybe the Sega Genesis version were the only good titles for not only the Caped Crusader, but for most superhero games. It was like a curse. Tie in a big name and get shit. But you know all the story by now. Have you ever liked something with such fervor until someone else's opinion suddenly made you look at things with a different perspective? Like your first girlfriend that is a sentient series of glued together red flags that walks and talks, but you just can't see what everyone else sees. Batman and Robin is such a game from my youth. I was immediately sucked into the game's presentation. I know what you're thinking. This game looks like shit. But through the lens of a young gamer that had read multiple previews of the game that looked this promising, along with the then unknown ideology of pushing a game back until it's ready, combined with the psychotic level of denial that we would ever get a good Batman game after the NES Classic, I had such high hopes for this game. Picture this. It's a 1998 action-adventure game, you playing as Batman, Robin, or Batgirl, or who the fuck plays as either of them, you're Batman. Collect clues about the whereabouts of Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger's next plans to heist a diamond somewhere in Gotham City. Find the location in real time within a small open world environment, and intercept his goons using batarangs, fisticuffs, and all sorts of gadgets to a style of a game most reminiscent of Tomb Raider. There's driving, fighting, exploring, and detective work. The game also showcases a then mind-blowing cape, and I'll just say, still looks fucking great compared to a lot of titles for the next 2.5 decades. Sounds amazing? It almost is. There's just one major issue with the game. It doesn't work. As most publications dumped upon this title, the camera in particular in Batman and Robin may be the most obstructive, confusing, and nightmarishly headache-inducing in the history of video games. In the first area alone, you will fight this thing tooth and nail to accomplish the most menial of tasks within the thorough but incredibly annoying tutorial section, as there apparently isn't a flag within the tutorial for "I've read this already, you don't need to interrupt me mid-jump for the third time, please and thanks." But being an obstructive camera isn't really where things fall apart. It's the game's direction, as even in the completely fleshed out initial crime scene, you are bombarded with camera cuts that seem to imply what you need to do, but come across as confounding and create a level of stress unique to only Batman and Robin. Why do I say stressful? Well, while you are trying to find your way to unlock the gem as to not have it stolen by Mr. Freeze, a non-stop barrage of goons will plod in your direction to give out animations that imply fighting moves, while the screen flashes red and your health drops. You can sometimes kick the shit out of these guys, and sometimes a single goon will deplete your health bar within seconds. This is a third-generation combat after all, and honestly, I can't even fault the game too hard in this department, as every game sucked in their attempts to do this. What isn't acceptable, however, is that these guys won't stop coming, and sometimes spawn directly in front of you. You know what doesn't help? The incessant soundtrack that, while it's sounding decent, loops aggressively and doesn't fit the mood whatsoever. What would you garnish on top of the stressful environment with enemies that endlessly teleport into the arena? How about an alarm that blares absolutely fucking non-stop? Just stop already. Things don't go very well here, but maybe it's just getting used to the tank controls, which are as ambitious as games get. Your shoulder buttons toggle between detective and ass-whooping mode, along with walking and running speeds. Holding either button temporarily swaps to the former setting, while tapping it sets it permanently. It honestly works alright, considering they built the controls over the overly ambitious game engine, which is clearly the hallmark of feature creep. With design in the game with silently plodding enemies that pop up around corners, with their poor animations and unfair mechanics set to a downright evil camera system is not a good way to start things off. But it's this ambition, along with its presentation, that made me overlook this nightmarish level of jank back in the day, using every ounce of my imagination to overcome the confusing camera angles and jump cuts to what the developers assumed we knew what the fuck is going on. I just kept pressing onward to the next crime scene, with an area that flat out broke me on my revisit, forcing a restart of the area, and all of this to the lovely tune of... I mean, seriously? All that extra time in the oven, and no one thought, you know what, maybe the player doesn't want to listen to this for 20 minutes straight. So anyhow, I got quite a few hours into the game back in the day, full denial mode activated. And then, upon review, my favorite publication of the time, Ultra Game Players, took a giant shit upon the game. Unfortunately, I cannot locate the back issue in question, so I'll paraphrase the opening. What's dark, bland, and infuriating to play? Batman and Robin. My tiny gamer heart sank. But it's so good! Look at the cape! The editor went on to explain the myriad of faults the game presents to the player, and one by one, my realization that I had no rebuke to any of these gripes. While the camera remains obviously awful, the graphics that it poorly frames is still some of the best the PlayStation can put out from a technical standpoint, and I'll die on that hill. It really is a sad hill to die on. Now let me rest on the Batman and Robin on PSX that looked really good still hill. And I have anecdotal evidence of this, since my buddy that was watching me capture footage of the game, having no real knowledge of game consoles before Xbox, thought that this was a PS2 game, and that this was to count for something, complimenting the Batmobile, which, once again, I dare you to point out a cooler looking and sounding vehicle on the PSX. Yes, the game sucks total ass, but god damn it, they nailed the aesthetics, alright? Can you let me have this one thing? Just this once.
Demonica is a creature from an unknown realm. It is a mystery why she is here.
Criticom is a button masher tech demo launch title developed by Kronos Digital Entertainment for the PlayStation, released in 1995. This will be a short review as there isn't much to say about the worst game of all time. And I know there's a ton of competitors out there, but this is the worst one I have ever seen, heard, or played. It's so shockingly bad, not only because of what I'm about to show you, but the fact that this game was not bombarded with hatred when it was released, presumably being due to the game being a launch title, and we are all so enamored with 3D polygons that we forgave the sheer drivel that this game provides. I'm not saying the reviews are any good, as they average out to around 5 out of 10 if you factor in the 2 obviously paid reviews, or it averages 4 if you use a median average, and due to my hatred of this game's existence, I now understand why people use median versus a flat average. Statistics. This game averages 4 out of 10, which is about 10 times what it deserves when we are to use a 1 out of 100 scale. You know what? Let's use the Ultra Game Player's Guide to rate this fucker. It's been a long time in the making, so why not go through this effort? The premise, story, and setting are all about a group of characters that fight for a relic. Each character gets a brief, cringe-inducing cutscene with a 2-sentence backstory before button mashing against an AI opponent of questionable design. Let's start with Gorn.
Gorm, the mightiest of the Dorlons. His king sent him on a noble mission to retrieve the relic in hopes of saving their dying race.
Such a unique design. Let's dive in.
Commence battle.
Now I know what you're thinking. Yes, you. Knock it off. Knock it off. And don't you be reading my mind between 4 and 5. That's Trevlin's time. You have definitely seen worse fighting games, and you'd be right. For a game made in 1995 on the fledgling system, the game looks okay, and that is reflected on the review with a rating of 7. I'd rate it higher if it weren't for the ridiculous animations on canvas, particularly Demonica, who cheapens out of her animation getting off the ground by rotating the character model like she's an action figure held by a child. And that rating of 7 for the graphics ends my compliments for this game. Time for the good stuff. How about the worst fighting game controls of all time? Do you have any idea just how much this game sucks to play? It's bad enough to struggle with bad fighting game controls, especially against an AI that knows how to ground pound you with each and every single solitary fucking time you land on the ground. It is unavoidable.
This is such garbage! Ooh! Ooh! And he's gonna do the chin move! Unavoidable chin move! Unavoidable chin move!
I spent a good 20 minutes in the versus mode trying to find the button combination required to do this attack, and simply cannot find it. But the AI doesn't care, it just pounces. And this attack does more damage than just about everything else in the game, making each battle a headache to get through. I, however, have an ace up my sleeve, and it's this spear swing that I decided was my only move for the first run through the campaign, if you want to call it a campaign. There are no rounds in the game, just an orange blob that is lost when you lose a health bar. You can ring out, causing an instant end to the match, which I was happy to oblige on this enemy that didn't get the memo to keep walking into my spear. The innovation, and I'm using the term as loosely as possible, is that when you beat every opponent in the campaign, you upgrade your armor, which is simply a reskin of your character. Alongside this, each opponent also levels up, both in armor design and cheapness of the AI. There might be a final boss character at the end of this drudgery of absolute nonsense, but I went back to the menu screen, causing my progress to erase, along with my erasing of this game from my hard drive. Insert hilarious method of game destruction here. Criticom may not be the worst fighting game of all time, but it's certainly worse than anything I have ever played. It's a sleeper hit, if the hit was snorting of metal shavings, downing a quarter bottle of Goldschlager and topping it off with sherbet. Who the fuck eats sherbet? Gross. After tallying my fair and balanced score, I came up with the apt score of 0.61 on the Ultra Game Player's rating system. Prior to this, game players would use a simpler but still complex rating system for its reviews, with a 0% referring to Cosmic Race. With their rebrand fast approaching, Chris Charla was giving the daunting task of rating what they submit. Well, let's just read the review. You may have noticed that a rating of 0 in Game Player's scoring formula was named Cosmic Race. Well, with Game Players changing its review style next month, among other things, we thought we'd let you know why with a review of the Japanese game that we humbly submit as the worst game of all time. Of course, the gameplay isn't all that's wrong here. The graphics look like they were taken straight from a PlayStation Development Kit graphics library, which of course they were. Your mom could do better graphics than this, seriously. A team of experts with an unlimited budget, Cray supercomputers, hundreds of playtesters, and thousands of hours of consumer focus group studies couldn't make a game this bad if they tried. If you ever have some extra dough in your pocket and you want to see how bad things can get, pick this one up on import. Just don't say we didn't warn you. Graphics, 0. Music and sound effects, 0. Innovation, 0. Gameplay, 0. Replay value, 0. Ouch. Don't cry for me, I'm already dead. Let's fucking go, baby. I know what you're thinking. The music, it's actually not that bad. How bad could a game labeled as the worst game of all time be? Spoiler, yes. While I think a couple of things in this review are a tad exaggerated, there is collision in this game. This may in fact be agreeable that I have never played a title as bad as this. Big Rigs, being the lowest rated video games in Metacritic history, would be rated lower overall, but that game would be as arguably more notarized due to internet shit-talking culture and angry video game nerds. It also came out in 2003, nearly a decade later, so that's an argument that is now off the table. Cosmic Race starts things off with a story mode, a series of paragraphs in Japanese. Why no one has bothered to translate such a masterpiece is beyond me, so maybe Google can lend a hand. Hey everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Grace, an assistant professor in the Department of Virtual Simulation Engineering. I'll be working on visual effects technology for a while, but today I'd like to start by having you experience something I think you'll all heard of before, VED. VED is a virtual simulation disk, a system that creates a virtual space that is as close to the real world as possible, allowing you to experience it as if you were actually there. The title is Cosmic Race, which has become legendary in recent years as racing sports have flourished. Although it appears in the history of the star system, Cosmic has a variety of historical backgrounds in addition to being the largest, most dangerous, and harshest race in history. This shit goes on for paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. It's nuts. You have a lovely options menu, including this binary flag for controlling up and down. Who said this game doesn't have graphics? Look at that rotating menu. Next, we can fire up one of the many modes available. The main mode is Cosmic Race. We name ourselves and pick one of 6 riders: Cyan Square, Kenjo T, underscore Clis Paldo, Eska Krek, and Barbara K. You have a stage select, and as far as I understand, is stage 1. From here on out, you're on your own, buddy. Controlling your ship truly is the thing of nightmares at this point, almost feeling like a fever dream. Or, this is a niche explanation, but have you ever driven a pallet jack before? And you pick up a pallet at a weird angle, and the pallet itself moves at a different angle than what the wheels are going. You move forward with the R1 key, and bank with the left and right on the D-pad. You also bank with the square and circle buttons, kind of in conjunction with the D-pads. R2 and L2 control the camera to attempt to get the bearing on your surroundings while you do this. The course is met within the confines of the striped polygons representing the edges of the course, and a transparent field on the bottom represents the lower plane of the course. You can run through all of this, but your speed decreases when you are under or over the plane. Think of it as a suggestion of where you should be. Like playing this game is only a suggestion. Like snorting metal shavings for fun is a suggestion. Should you snort metal shavings for fun? I won't stop you. It's a free country. Kind of. Being the glutton for self-flagellation, I actually made multiple attempts to finish a race to see if there's anything beyond the initial sensation of having your head in a vice. I am fairly convinced most sane people would set this game down almost immediately upon firing up the first track. But I'm intrigued just how broken this game actually is. So on another attempt, I managed to play the game more or less as intended, pretending we care for a moment. If you can manage to stay lower to the ground while also being between the side markers, you'll gain speed and actually race the other vehicles, or at least the marker claims that I am winning. Upon completing the race, your menu options remain the exact same as before, and no real progress, as far as I can tell, is obtainable. What a pity, now I have to stop playing the game? There are other modes which are equally non-functioning, but the highlight of the stupidity is the mode where you take turns driving a vehicle in any random direction, and the other player has to try to touch their ghost. I have had dreams at 3 a.m. with better game ideas pop into my head, and that's not saying much about my ideas. Is Cosmic Race the worst game of all time? At that point in history, before indie developers flooded the market with pure shit on itch.io, such as the horrendous fan game John's Awakening, featuring a YouTuber being meta-stuck in his own worst type of content. Man, what a dumb game by a pretentious asshat. Let's watch his stupid trailer. Man, this guy sucks. You get it yet? It's me. Anyway, at this point in history, this game ran a full retail price, roughly $60 American. It is truly a broken, unfun, headache-inducing mess of polygons that can't even be played for the badness of it. It's not a fun bad like The Room.
You are lying. I made it hit you. You gotta
It's bad like The Beach.
But if I remember correctly, in that last glimmer of its eyes, there was a moment between us where he said, "Hey, Richard, man, enjoy your dinner."
In the words of Snestrunk, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. And thanks again for your votes on my Patreon. South Boogie Bio, It's Joe's Fault, Hiroshima, Porygon for the win, and Sir Volke.
Sonarch Nazome. His older brother was heir to the throne of Emperor. Seeing an opportunity to seize the throne for himself, Sonarch murdered his own flesh and blood. Sergeant Exene Dulay travels from a worn-torn planet in search of a relic that will save the world. Hilara of the Zorai clan was destined for the throne. Failed in her duties to protect the relic, she vowed vengeance on the one who stole her honor and destiny. Dayton Trent, a soldier of fortune, he will soon embark on the greatest treasure hunt of all time. Product of a twisted experiment gone wrong, the sentient integrated droids wander aimlessly, destroying all carbon-based life forms. Yenji, survivor of the Great War, witnessed the murder of her family by the Chosen Ones. She has devoted her life in ending their reign.